In the news this week, the latest update on the Margaret River bushfire as firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the blaze.
An exclusive news poll shows viewers' consensus after abduction victim Susie Gilmore shared her story. And think of the children. Protesters call for better government duty of care of Indigenous children in prison. Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Leung and Sarah Smith.
Several weeks after Susie Gilmore shared her horrific abduction experience, calls for the McGowan government to toughen up kidnapping penalties remain unanimous, according to an exclusive news poll by WAMN News.
Reporter Maleva Thorne has the exclusive details. Melly, the consensus within the community is still very strong indeed.
A month ago, we brought you the story of Susie Gilmore, the victim of an abduction in Busselton in 1967. The story has triggered an overwhelming response from our viewers. In addition to this, an exclusive news poll by WAMN News this week, over 80% of viewers have voted yes so far. Only 15 years old, what Susie went through was horrific. Luckily, she escaped and was returned to her family by police. Her kidnappers all received different sentences. One man received 5 years imprisonment, another 9 years, and another received 23 years.
Why weren't all three given the same sentence?
In WA, the maximum penalty for kidnapping is 20 years in jail. Victims of crime advocate and retired lawyer Peter Neal believes that such calls for harsher sentencing may actually not benefit victims.
If you impose a mandate, an automatic life sentence, there's going to be a greater reason why a person should be murdered because they want to hide their crime. And I think there is that definite risk. And she was lucky that one of her captors objected to her being killed.
If you or someone you know is a victim of sexual assault, you can contact the National Sexual Assault and Family Violence Counselling Service at 1-800-737-732 for support, or go to www.1800respect.org.au for more information.
The latest update on the Margaret River bushfire after it was burning several days in the southwest. More than 5,000 hectares have been burnt as DFS WA worked throughout the week to contain the blaze. Some good news this weekend, with cooler temperatures and the rain has helped firefighters to contain the blaze. The fire has raged through bushlands and the devastation can be seen in the latest footage. Although it's miraculous no lives and properties were lost in the area, police believe the blaze was deliberately lit near Mammoth Cave and urged anyone with dashcam footages, mobile phone visions of people and vehicles in the area on the 8th of December to come forward.
Progress overnight was very good. Our boundary is held to the north and mostly all along the eastern boundary as well. And just securing the southern boundary. Obviously, the ocean is the other side that isn't a real concern to us with fire.
Volunteer firefighters are the real heroes as they worked tirelessly to keep the area safe. Just before I came back to Perth, I went to visit the local men and women at the Wallcliff Fire Brigade as they prepare and maintain their equipment. Although it was a tough battle against the inferno, many of them are smiling brightly, and I'm sure their efforts will be appreciated by the local community and you. Meanwhile, I've also talked to the Shire President. She says this coming week the town will focus on recovery efforts.
Next week we'll start the recovery process. At this stage, I cannot even see past what we've been dealing with, which has been dealing with the fire. But we are now starting to think of the recovery and try to get an assessment of the losses and what the impacts of the fire. So I think we've got a couple of weeks of very hard work in front of us. And our volunteers will be working on for at least a couple of weeks in dealing with the fire.
So far, the alert has been downgraded by DFS WA, but we'll keep you up to date when the situation changes.
There are claims the state government is failing First Nations children, with protesters demanding better duty of care for those in prison. Activists are claiming Aboriginal children are being mistreated behind bars, but the government says more needs to be done to avoid putting them there to begin with. Nelson Liu reports.
Gathering in protest for WA's Indigenous children, fighting a system that is failing them.
It is a travesty that our young children are subjected to the system that is allowing the mistreatment of our children.
WA's First Nations people are demonstrating for their kids' welfare, claiming they're victims by being Indigenous, continually facing incarceration and mistreatment in prison.
Young children's spirits are severely broken when incarcerated. The officers who control our kids' incarceration, but are negligent of their duty of care.
They want improved duty of care and safeguards to prevent more children ending up behind bars.
We call on this government to ensure the welfare of our children. We demand age consent of criminal responsibility be lifted from 10 to 15 years of age.
Demonstrators say First Nations children are suffering under the current system of government, but the government says they're listening to their concerns.
Well, I mean, I understand their perspective. Everybody has a right to protest, and I welcome people expressing their points of view about any issue that's important to them.
They say a bigger effort is needed to keep young Indigenous people out of prison.
It's unfortunate that so many young people end up in the youth justice system, and we need to do more to avoid that.
The state government has spoken with protest organisers 6 weeks ago, receiving a letter of legal action, while also meeting with advocacy organisations. But protesters just want immediate action.
Because our children issues are very serious.
Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
Western Australia is on track to drop its borders as the double jab rate continues to climb. This week, our rate has reached just below 80% fully jabbed, meaning that we are on track to reach the 90% projection. Although the uncertainty on the Omicron variant continues to cause concerns, Premier Mark McGowan remains committed to reopen WA to both interstate and internationally.
So we obviously have to understand Omicron. So I've noted what's happening in Britain today. They're looking at more lockdowns, mask wearing, they're looking at mandating across the community vaccines. Because of what's happening there. Omicron, I saw a report in South Africa that there's massive increase in hospitalisation. All these things need to be taken into account.
WA's iconic cricketing ground is being transformed in a bid to keep the over a century-old site relevant. The famous Inverarity stand has been moved to make way for a new aquatic centre as part of the Wacker Ground Improvement Project. The project is expected to create hundreds of jobs in WA and is part of the $1.5 billion Perth City deal. And for those concerned as to its welfare, the 50-year-old Inverarity stand is safe and sound and will be moved to a new pavilion.
And it's a good deal for the ratepayers and residents of the City of Perth. Our thanks again to the federal government, to the state government and to the WACA, led by Terry Waldron and Christina Matthews, the CEO.
A purpose-built women's refuge facility in Perth's east will assist women escaping family and domestic violence. Construction has begun on the $8.7 million Metropolitan Women's Refuge, providing crisis and transitional accommodation to support 18 women, along with wraparound support services. The McGowan government says it's a crucial infrastructure to help keep women safe and help them rebuild their lives.
It has been a 6-year project that we've worked in collaboration with the Department of Communities, and to get here and to be able to provide the women in hopefully 18 months' time with a place of safety and a place of dignity that is warm and inviting. We are beyond thrilled and appreciative.
Swan and Canning River businesses will be phasing out single-use plastics in a 2-stage plan to reduce their impact on waterways and wildlife. Cafes, restaurants and shops will get a helping hand in the $500,000 McGowan government commitment, with the first stage involving plastic bowls, cups, plates, cutlery and plastic bags. Phase 2 will begin early next year and will ban cotton buds, polystyrene packaging, microbeads and takeaway cups with lids. The state government says the phase-out will help reduce the damage single-use plastics cause to the environment.
Young people and children in Perth's southern suburbs are having a blast as the Australian Arab Association opens its youth centre. Serving young people till late night every week, it provides children and teenagers opportunities to socialise. The association's president says the facility provides a safe and secure place where local kids can have fun under supervision. Young people, on the other hand, see the centre as a source of joy.
Well, the best feature is to give them a place actually to come and enjoy their time. We have this, issue with the youth. They stay here for us for till 12, 13 years old, and then They leave because they don't have any sort of activities to keep them with us. So we need to keep them here and keep them in a circle. So this is why we came up with this, and it looks like it's going to work well.
We enjoy basically having fun with our friends instead of just staying at home, watching TV, playing games around with our friends, having fun. Yeah.
Definitely, this gets you all together, even at age old school. We have 20-year-olds dancing with us in that room and 5-year-olds playing with the hockey. It brings you all together.
Makes you want to be a kid again, doesn't it?
Who doesn't? Let's be young again, shall we, Sarah?
Yeah.
We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But right now, here's Melly with Western Perspective.
Thanks, Ivan and Sarah. Welcome to Western Perspective. I'm Malaire the Fawn. This week, the issues surrounding youth incarceration continues to grip Western Australia, including a class action set to be launched by members of the community. The group held a protest outside Corrective Services Minister Bill Johnston's electorate office, with more demonstrations set to come in the next few weeks. I spoke with Indigenous activists Mervyn Eads and Megan Cracker, who are calling for changes to the state's age of criminal responsibility.
We're concerned about the treatment of the children at Banksia Hill, the physical abuse, and the psychological abuse, mental abuse that our children are going through, and then we have the abuses of isolation, which contravenes the human rights of any child in prison. Lockdowns for excessive periods at a time, and we can't have that. We can't have that, not in Australia, and it's got to be called out. And the minister and government and everyone needs to start owning it. Don't tell everyone it's okay and it's all good and that. When we just had the unions come out and say 800 understaffed in the prisons here in West Australia, there is huge problems, and lockdowns for long periods. Children locked in, not only in isolation, but in units and the wings for excessive amount of times because...
Can you please tell me about your reaction to the Minister's response?
Sure. So myself and my colleague, we've met up with Bill Johnston. That was about 6 weeks ago. It was a very fiery meeting. He shut us down, we shut him down. There was nothing nice about that meeting at all. We have 500 people that have registered part of this class action, 500 testimonies. They can't all be saying that it's not right in terms of what's happened there. There's a collaboration of some of the testimonies that have come forward. 1, lack of staff. 2, the brutality that have been inflicted. 3, the lack of psychological services, the lack of education, and people are being demoralised in a heartless system.
Can you please tell me a bit about the coming action in the next few weeks?
Yeah, there's been rolling rallies to do with the Banksia Hill action and what we call is not our children being mistreated in there. But it continues, and in a week or so we're going to finish the rallies that we have done by having a vigil outside of Banksia Hill Detention Centre.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now, here is AMA-WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. Great news out today that boosters will be available for people 5 months post their second dose, and fairly confident that this will be reduced for others as time goes by and we see the threat of Omicron on the horizon coming into Australia at the same time as reduced travel restrictions. Western Australia staying the course, waiting to see what's happening in other states, which I think is a prudent thing to do at this stage, because anyone who's telling you that Omicron is mild is really operating on hope at the moment, and that's a great hope to have, but we don't have the data to back that up, particularly in a population like Australia where we only have 3% of people who've had their booster dose over the age of 12 at the moment. So the evidence would seem that vaccine is not going to be particularly effective in our population at the moment against this disease, where very few people have had previous infections, unlike in places like South Africa. So we can't really compare like for like with them at the moment in terms of hospitalisations and so on. So we need to keep a watching eye on Omicron to see whether it really is milder than the current version, but even then, much better to avoid this disease by vaccine, and certainly the third dose is going to be very important for everyone. Great that we'll be starting our young kids in January, but that hasn't started yet, and we still have the 6-month-old to 4-year-old age range to think about in terms of when are we going to get a vaccine to protect them. There's some evidence that the youngest of babies in fact do worse than some of the older kids. So a lot of work still to be done. The good news is, of course, we know how to prevent airborne spread now. Not enough emphasis of airborne spread coming out of government and other voices at the moment. We do need to breathe clean air indoors. We do need to be monitoring carbon dioxide, keeping it under 800 parts per million indoors. You can get cheap monitors to check on that. We do need HEPA filters for stagnant air spaces. You don't need to go down the path of ionisers or UV, all that sort of stuff. We don't need it. We just need HEPA filtration. And so getting those for enclosed indoor spaces where there's going to be people sharing air, very important. And of course, masks, N95, KF94 masks, great Christmas present for kids. They're going to be going back to school next year, potentially into a very different environment. And hopefully we'll see a culture of mask wearing as it is in Asian countries spring up here. We know that very unlikely to spread COVID of any variant to somebody else if you're wearing a high level mask. And so if we get everybody used to wearing them in situations where it's not fresh air, then it doesn't matter what the variants do over time. It means that we will be able to slow the disease down dramatically. There's also good news around certain antivirals that are coming onto the market. And certainly in a few months' time, we would expect to see that landscape change as well. So every bit of extra time that we can buy, particularly for those people who are either too young to be vaccinated, who can't be vaccinated for legitimate medical reasons, or who have things like organ transplants and immunosuppressive drugs, chemotherapy drugs, where the vaccines just don't work as well. We need to protect all of those people. That's what we do with the rest of our healthcare budget, and that's what we need to be doing now because it's the right thing to do as a society. There's no point being really rich if you're also really mean. That's pretty much the end of every Hollywood movie I've ever seen. So it's something that runs deep within our human nature, is to look after other people. So take care, stay safe. Thanks for your time.
That's Dr. Andrew Miller, and that's Western Perspective for this week. We will be back next time. But for now, it's back to you, Ivan and Sarah.
Thanks, Melly. And here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. And on 6 News, breaking news, Queensland just hours away from reopening its border to interstate COVID hotspots. Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk confident the state's hospital system can cope with the predicted surge in cases and the new Omicron variant. We're on the ground with special coverage on what this means for businesses and the wider community. Plus, UK authorities warned that the Omicron variant will likely become the dominant form of the virus across the country in just days. Restrictions on Australia's international border, meanwhile, extended as a result of the new mutation. And Dr. Monique Ryan unveils her official campaign as an independent candidate for the federal seat of Kooyong, aiming to take the seat from Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. But independents like her are facing criticism from the Liberals, who claim they're a fraud and are voices for Labor and the Greens. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or our website 6newsau.com. For now, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
From Sarah and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for stopping by.
Every weekend.
We begin with a story you will only see here.
In news still unfolding,
Ivan Loon, Sarah Smith, and the award-winning WAMN team bring you the exclusive stories and interviews that set the agenda.
I watched live on WAMN News.
Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's expert medical comment.
We don't want to see large numbers of children admitted to hospital because it's going to put enormous pressure.
Sunday evening news and WP. Every Sunday night after 6:30 on WAMN News, Perth's alternative voice.